Welcome back to Viral Stories, where unbelievable real life moments come alive. If you love shocking twists and powerful stories, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. The courtroom was alive with tension even before the case began. The air was heavy, carrying with it the faint smell of polished wood and the quiet hum of murmurs from spectators who had come not just to witness justice, but to be entertained by the day's drama. For many, court was not merely about the law. It was a theater of real lives, mistakes, punishments, and sometimes shocking surprises. That day, however, no one knew that they were about to watch a performance unlike anything they had ever seen. When the bailiff called for order and the heavy doors opened, a teenager stepped inside. He looked completely out of place, as though he had wandered into the wrong room. His hoodie sagged loosely on his small frame, the sleeves nearly covering his hands. His jeans were slightly wrinkled, and his sneakers squeaked on the polished floor, drawing unnecessary attention to him with every step. His posture didn't help. Slouched shoulders, hesitant movements, and the way he clutched a folder against his chest like a shield made him seem fragile, timid, and vulnerable. The audience took notice immediately. A ripple of laughter whispered through the benches, the kind of laugh people share when they think they're watching something embarrassing unfold. A few whispered jokes passed from one person to another. He must be lost. Maybe he's here for traffic court. Looks like someone's skipping school. But the judge, a tall man with a reputation for being strict and sarcastic, noticed more than anyone else. His dark robe swayed as he leaned forward, peering down at the boy through his glasses. His lips curled into a smirk that carried both amusement and superiority. It was as if he had been handed a gift, something to mock, something to use as a lesson to the rest of the room. "Young man," the judge said loudly, his voice echoing off the walls, "are you sure you're in the right place? This isn't a school assembly. This is a court of law. We deal with serious matters here, not playground disputes." The courtroom erupted in light laughter, fueled by the judge's sharp tone. The bailiff tried to quiet them, but even he couldn't hide the smirk tugging at his lips. The teenager froze for a moment, his eyes darting to the crowd, then back to the floor. His face turned red, and for a second, he looked like he might bolt from the room. He hugged the folder tighter, his knuckles white as he gripped it. The mocking had worked, at least it seemed that way to everyone watching. The judge wasn't done. "Well, cat got your tongue, or are you just waiting for your mom to show up and explain why you're here?" He chuckled at his own words, and a few others followed. The atmosphere shifted from laughter to ridicule. The teenager was no longer just an observer in their eyes. He was the entertainment, the joke of the morning. But what the judge and everyone else failed to notice was the sharpness in the boy's eyes, hidden beneath his quiet demeanor. For a moment, the mask of nervousness slipped, and a spark of determination flickered. He drew in a deep breath, lifted his chin slightly, and adjusted the folder in his hands. Though still silent, his body language shifted ever so subtly. If anyone had been paying close attention, they would have noticed that he wasn't shrinking anymore. He was waiting. Waiting for the right moment, the court clerk cleared her throat, flipping through the schedule. She called out the next case on the docket, expecting to see the defendant shuffle forward with his attorney. Instead, the teenager walked up to the table. His sneakers squeaked again, this time louder, because the entire courtroom had gone silent. Whispers rippled again. "What's he doing? Does he think he's part of this? This kid's going to get himself thrown out." The judge raised his eyebrows and leaned back in his chair. His tone dripped with sarcasm as he spoke again. Well, this is new. What exactly do you think you're doing, son? Planning to represent yourself, or perhaps you're here to deliver pizza? You certainly dressed the part." Another burst of laughter spread through the benches, echoing in the wooden chamber like cruel applause. The boy didn't respond. Instead, he opened his folder carefully, pulling out neatly stacked papers and spreading them across the desk with steady hands. His face was calm now, no longer showing the panic from earlier. He didn't look at the judge. He didn't look at the crowd. He focused only on the documents before him, scanning them as though he'd done this 1,000 times. People leaned forward, craning their necks to get a better view. The whispers grew louder. Wait, is he actually serious? What is he holding? Those look like legal briefs. No way. This has to be some prank. The bailiff took a cautious step forward, unsure if he should intervene, but the teenager's composure was so steady it left even the officers uncertain of what to do. The judge, however, was still convinced this was all some ridiculous stunt. He slammed his gavel lightly, not in anger but in mock authority. Son, you've had your fun. Now, sit down before you embarrass yourself further. This is a courtroom, not an audition for a television drama. This time, the boy looked up. His eyes locked with the judge's, and for the first time, he spoke not loudly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. His words were simple. I know exactly where I am. His voice wasn't shaky or timid. It was steady, controlled, and filled with quiet confidence. The laughter that had been bubbling in the room suddenly died down, replaced with curiosity. The shift was so subtle, but it was powerful enough to silence even the judge for a brief second. The boy adjusted his papers again, his fingers gliding over highlighted sections, his lips moving as if rehearsing silent arguments. Every motion was purposeful, every gesture deliberate. The atmosphere changed. The crowd, which moments ago was amused, was now confused. The judge frowned, suddenly less entertained and more suspicious. Yet still, he couldn't resist another jab. Well, you certainly have spirit, but spirit doesn't win cases. Knowledge does, and something tells me, son, you're not ready for the weight of this room. The teenager didn't flinch this time. He placed his folder flat on the desk, straightened his shoulders, and sat down with the poise of someone who belonged there. His expression was calm, but beneath that calmness was something electric, something waiting to be revealed. The laughter had vanished completely, leaving behind only the sound of shuffling papers and uneasy breathing. Everyone in that courtroom thought they knew the story. They thought they were watching a confused boy in over his head, a child about to be swallowed by the seriousness of the law. What they didn't know was that the boy wasn't lost at all. He was exactly where he needed to be. And the mockery, the laughter, and the disbelief that filled the room would soon transform into shock, awe, and complete silence. That day, in that wooden chamber filled with skeptical eyes and cruel smirks, the stage had been set for a revelation no one could have imagined. The boy wasn't a lost teenager wandering into the wrong place. He was the storm about to change everything. The silence in the courtroom was thick enough to feel. The kind of silence that didn't come from order or respect, but from confusion and disbelief. The boy, who just moments ago had been dismissed as a joke, sat calmly at the defense table. His hands moved steadily as he arranged his documents, flipping pages with a precision that suggested this wasn't his first time. The crowd of onlookers, who had been laughing freely before, now shifted uncomfortably in their seats, caught between curiosity and the leftover echoes of their earlier ridicule. The judge cleared his throat. He was not a man used to losing control of a room, and certainly not to a teenager. He tapped his gavel lightly, his voice firm. All right, enough of this charade. State your name and explain what you think you're doing here. His tone was still sharp, but there was a crack in it, a small sign that even he wasn't fully sure what to make of the situation anymore. The teenager lifted his gaze, meeting the judge's eyes with a calmness that didn't match his age. His voice, clear and steady, filled the room. My name is Alexander Kane. I'm here as defense counsel for the accused. The words struck like a lightning bolt. Gasps rippled across the benches, followed by the low rumble of shocked whispers. What did he say? Defense counsel? He's just a kid. That's impossible. The judge blinked, taken aback. He leaned forward, studying the boy's expression, looking for some sign of sarcasm or trickery, but there was none. Alexander's face was calm, serious, and completely confident. Defense counsel, the judge repeated slowly, almost as if tasting the words. You're telling me you're the attorney in this case. You expect me to believe that. Alexander didn't flinch. He opened the first document in his stack, sliding it neatly across the desk to the clerk, My credentials, he said. The clerk, visibly hesitant, took the papers and scanned them before passing them up to the bench. The judge adjusted his glasses, reading quickly. His eyes moved across the page, widening slightly, then narrowing again. The room held its breath. It was true. The documents were authentic. The teenager had not only graduated law school at an astonishingly young age, but had passed the bar exam with one of the highest scores on record. The judge's smirk faded completely. He set the papers down slowly, as though they had burned his hands. The spectators erupted again, this time in astonishment rather than amusement. No way, he's a real lawyer. How old is he? 15, 16. That's insane. People leaned forward, trying to get a better look at the boy who, minutes ago, they had dismissed as nothing more than a joke. The judge raised his gavel and banged it down hard, demanding silence. His voice was louder now, firmer, as if regaining his composure. Order, order in the court. The noise subsided reluctantly, but the energy in the room had shifted completely. The balance of power, which had rested comfortably in the judge's mocking tone, now hung uncertainly in the air, tilted toward the boy who had just rewritten everyone's expectations. Alexander began speaking again, his voice steady and deliberate. Your Honor, my client has been accused of a crime he did not commit. Today, I intend to prove his innocence with evidence, precedent, and the truth. The way he spoke was unlike any teenager anyone had ever heard. His words carried authority. They were clear, articulate, and structured like someone far beyond his years. The prosecution, a seasoned attorney with decades of experience, stood up with visible irritation. Your Honor, this is absurd. The defense counsel is barely old enough to drive. This entire proceeding is a circus. He gestured toward Alexander dismissively, his voice rising with frustration. This boy has no place in this courtroom. Alexander didn't react with anger. Instead, he calmly pulled another paper from his folder and held it up. With respect, counselor, the law recognizes competence, not age, and competence is exactly what I have. He then recited, word for word, a statute from the state legal code regarding the requirements for practicing law. His delivery was flawless, his memory exact. The prosecutor froze mid-sentence, his confidence rattled. The judge, who had been skeptical from the start, found himself strangely impressed. He tried to mask it behind his stern demeanor, but there was no denying that Alexander wasn't just reciting words. He was wielding them like weapons. The trial proceeded, and with every passing moment, the boy dismantled the prosecution's case piece by piece. He cross-examined witnesses with surgical precision, asking questions that cut straight to the truth, exposing contradictions and weaknesses that seasoned attorneys had missed. When the prosecution presented evidence, Alexander countered with case law so obscure and perfectly cited that even the judge found himself flipping through his notes to confirm them. The spectators watched in stunned silence, their earlier laughter replaced with wide-eyed awe. Every time Alexander spoke, his words carried weight, each argument tighter and sharper than the last. The prosecutor, who had begun the day full of arrogance, now stumbled over his own objections, visibly shaken by the boy's composure. At one point, a key witness for the prosecution faltered under Alexander's questioning. The boy's questions were delivered with calm persistence, each one building upon the last, until the witness contradicted himself so badly that the judge raised an eyebrow and scribbled note. Furiously, the spectators gasped again, the realization dawning on them that this was not a boy pretending to be a lawyer. This was a lawyer, one of remarkable brilliance who just happened to be a boy. The judge, though trying to maintain authority, couldn't help but study Alexander with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Just hours ago, he had mocked the teenager openly, laughing at his appearance, his age, his very presence. Now he sat quietly, watching as this boy commanded the courtroom with a mastery that many adults never achieved in their entire careers. The climax of the trial came when Alexander delivered his argument before the jury. He spoke not with the arrogance of someone showing off, but with the conviction of someone fighting for truth. His words were steady, carefully chosen, painting a picture so vivid that even the most skeptical listener could see it. He drew from precedent, from logic, and from the evidence itself, weaving them together into a closing argument that left the room in stunned silence. Every eye was on him. The jury leaned forward, captivated. The spectators forgot to whisper. Even the prosecutor sat slumped, defeated by the relentless brilliance of his opponent. And the judge, once so smug, found himself nodding slowly, acknowledging what he had tried so hard to deny. When Alexander finished, he didn't bow or smile or seek approval. He simply returned to his seat, stacked his papers neatly, and folded his hands. His expression was calm, almost serene, as though he had done nothing extraordinary at all. But the silence that followed was extraordinary, a silence filled with respect, awe, and the realization that they had just witnessed something no one would ever forget. The gavel struck again, but this time its sound didn't carry mockery. It carried gravity, respect, and the acknowledgement that the courtroom had been changed. What began as a spectacle, a joke at the expense of a teenager, had turned into a display of genius that silenced every doubt.